Welcome back to Riding Bikes in San Diego. We are at India and Laurel here, and I had a decision to make. I have to get back uptown, and I could have either gone straight here and taken India up to, say, Washington, but that is a whole mess. So I decided instead to take Laurel, which is one of the biggest climbs in the city for a block or so. And this is just really showing you that it's not easy to cross freeways. Freeways cut up our cities in ways that make it difficult to get around, especially outside of a car. Of course, where we just were and where we are is Caltrans land, and Caltrans crossings are notorious for not having bike infrastructure. They are working on it, I hear, but we don't have it quite yet. We are on a hill, and this concrete section is huge. It ranges anywhere from like 16% of a grade to 20% of a grade. And especially for those who are here to geek out on bikes a bit, I'm riding my um, Navarro Virtua, I think is the name of the bike. It's like an old REI brand. I got it for free around the neighborhood. I did a little bit of work on it. I have an 11 speed, I think it's a 50 34 in the front and an 11 speed cassette in the back that goes up to 36. I wanted that I wanted to get better than the 1-to-1 ratio, but that was a gnarly climb. And then it gives way to this protected bike lane, which I've never ridden in before, so I really wanted to show it to you. And if you're interested in the details of the hill we just climbed, I can share those with you also right here. At its worst, that climb is at over 24% grade. So pretty gnarly, but it feels good sometimes. It feels good to get some exercise and and to push it. I've taken other bikes up that hill before and had to kind of start going back and forth a bit, weaving a little bit, and there's really not space for that over there. As much as this bike lane is awesome, you might notice if you scroll back, it did not start when we were going up that massive climb. That most of that climb was a big turning lane and parking. So here we are. But now we get not only flex posts and painted buffers, but we have a hard barrier. Those little curbs, they work wonders. You don't have to pour concrete. You don't have to, make a big permanent structure. You can put these little curbs in. I'm sure they're more cost effective. And it seems like they're able to stand up to drivers and cars butting into them. People chalk their wheels here too. And I will tell you, in years past, I have gotten a ticket before for not chalking my wheels on a hill. So make sure you do that if you're driving a car. Or just don't drive a car and ride a bike in this bike lane instead. It's pretty new. So I wanted to share that with you also. Again, this is one of the only ways to get from a neighborhood like Little Italy back uptown. And Laurel here, this particular road, is exceptionally valuable because it leads to Balboa Park, which is a major destination in San Diego and a place that we want to go to. And today we're going to cut through it to get to the bike lanes over on Park Boulevard. I really appreciate the consistency of the paint on this particular stretch, how each intersection is getting this green. And if I were going in the other direction, if I were heading west on this, especially in the downhill, I feel like, this is a great bit of infrastructure to have. And there is a lane on the other side. Although, just like going uphill, going downhill, it stops in that really steep part of Laurel. And that's treacherous. I once rode that stretch on a motorcycle, and it's one of the most terrifying motorcycle riding experiences I ever had, just because the grade is so steep and it puts so much stress on the brakes down at the bottom there. And but by this point in the hill, it's really mellowing out. It's super manageable to ride over here. I'm still on a bit of an uphill grade, but it's not nearly what it was before. and you see some of the physical barriers have given way here. Maybe the math changes a little bit. Maybe the street gets a little more narrow. I'm not quite certain. I wonder about that stuff when I'm riding too. Why infrastructure changes block for block. It's possible that there's now a turning lane up here, and to accommodate that turning lane we have just a little bit less room, but we just had some physical bollards. I don't know, maybe they just ran out of the physical barriers, and so they were using them a little more sparingly. I'm interested in how these decisions are made, and I don't know all the time, but I am interested. Uh, what baffles me, though, is that we are approaching 4th here, and the entire configuration is going to change a bit. We jog to the left a little to avoid this bump, and I like this bump because it narrows the entire street for pedestrians. So when that bump is there, it means a driver can't be there. And I'm going to jump this because up ahead, the bike lane disappears. So I looked around, there were no cars coming, no drivers, and I didn't want to get caught competing with the other drivers at that traffic light. So I went ahead of them because it was safer for me. And as you can see, they're about a block behind me. That car turned, and nice and quiet. But when there's an abrupt change in the infrastructure, it's jarring. Drivers don't expect it. People on bikes don't always expect it. So now we're back in a sharrow. And here's a bit of criticism for anybody in the city watching. I don't know why it changes up 2 blocks away from the major destination. If somebody is riding on Laurel, I think there's a decent chance that they are going to or coming from Balboa Park. And I don't know why it doesn't extend all the way. Also, it stopped at 4th. 4th and 5th both have incredible protected bike lanes, but these junctions that go across it fail. The infrastructure goes away. And because this is close to the park and parking at the park, this is the West Mesa. The city, even though there was no demand for it, according to data, decided to remove recreational space and put even more parking over here. And just stopping at that stop sign, waiting my turn. And there's even more car traffic over here now. We are on the Cabrillo Bridge at this point, and I do want to just point out that this should be closed. One of my arguments, one of my big things that I would love to see in San Diego is to have the Cabrillo Bridge closed to traffic. So there's a whole bunch of parking on the West Mesa. I was just talking about that. They added parking. You can park over there. You don't have to drive through the park. Especially if you're frustrated about parking in one area and want to get to another parking lot, you could take your frustration over onto the freeway and loop around, or some other road. This should not be open to drivers at all. This should be all pedestrian and non-motorized vehicles, although e-bikes are allowed. I like e-bikes, especially when they have pedal assist. I'm not big on the throttles. I know some people need them. I know that they're great, especially for older riders and people who are disabled. But personally, my own preference, at this point in my 40s, I stay away from the throttle. But the assist, total hill killer. Back there on Laurel would have been a lot easier if I were riding one of those. But this is such a beautiful area. I really wish that this entire street were pedestrian promenade. This person's just parking there in the red, whatever, It's a road, and in San Diego, if there's a road, people can just put their cars wherever they want. Stop it. As long as you have your flashers on, you can park wherever you want, right? But there's no need to get bitter when we're in the park. This is gorgeous over here, so I'm going to cut onto this promenade. This used to all be parking too, and some people might not remember that, but this was a parking lot. And it is so much more pleasant now. Sometimes there are tables set up out here. Sometimes there are little installations. Sometimes there are people doing tricks on bicycles and roller skates. And it's just a gorgeous spot. And now we are on the Plaza de Panama and just taking it real easy, real slow with all these wonderful people enjoying the park for the day. And, you've been here before, right? If you haven't been here, you should really get over here. We're passing some wonderful museums. Off to the left, the Botanical Garden, was just finished, I think, and reopened. And we got the Museum of Photographic Arts. We have a train museum, which my kid really enjoys going to, and just a whole lot of really wonderful spaces to enjoy. And even if you don't want to go and spend any money, just hanging out and walking through the park is lovely. And that brings us to not quite the end. We could keep going, and there are stairs that go up to a fountain, but I want to get on the road here. This giant pickup truck is too big to make it around the traffic circle. So while they negotiate the size of their vehicle, we are just going to make it through the parking lot. And we need to go through this parking lot because we have to get to the bike lane, and I'll speed it up a little bit for that. And I would consider this section part of the gap in the bike lane. It's beautiful to ride through the park, and it's beautiful to get to the park on the bike lane that goes to Laurel, but the bike lane ceases a couple blocks before Cabrillo Bridge, and then you go through the park, which is nice, but you're also just sharing the space with cars and drivers, and then you have to go through that road, which is really just a linear parking lot, right? It gets us back to the bike lane. It gets us back to this protected lane on Park Boulevard, and but it's really interesting that the park itself somehow is a barrier to safe riding. Thanks for coming along on Laurel with me from Little Italy all the way to the east side on Park Boulevard. And from here, I am going to drive less and ride a bike. Thanks.